Okay. Just a second.
So Chelly, you want to make sure that Kesra has a chance
Yes.
to get her topic area before she leaves, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we are, Patricia, Butler, and Ramona are working on the one in the left corner. They're set to meet today. The idea is that these are the things that have been proposed because this mural page has been available to people for the past maybe 10 days or so. So people have been adding sticky notes. We've had, a workshop. So once the team, like in this case, Patricia and Ramona, has a chance to review this, they're going to look at this part. They're going to do what, for example, Jessica and Sherry did here, which is create these black ones that are recommended. So they're going to consider what has been input and sort of propose the recommended proposed, which should be done. So, Kesra, you haven't quite gotten the black ones. I'll let you sticky notes yet, so I'll let you go right after I explain this. So we have some proposed by Parijat here, and on this side we have from Jessica and Sherry, from Pat Boyle, and from Scott and me. So what we're going to I'm sorry for rushing. What we're going to try to do today is just look at them individually, have a bit of a discussion, and see if people can offer their thoughts. Again, I will, let me just see. Oh, shoot. Let me just see. Does everybody see because some people joined a little later and then they wouldn't see. The link to the mural, I'll just introduce it here again if you want to look at the page directly on your own computer. So, Kesra, did you want to say a few words about your area?
Yeah, so just first off, the reason I didn't finalize mine was I was going to give people a couple of days to put their sticky notes in to make sure. And if there's anybody on this team, if they have things that they would want to add, and then once I've got all those, hopefully by tomorrow, I'll have my recommendations based on what's out there. But just to let people know what are tier 2 questions, right? It's not really an addition of a whole new set of questions. It really is if someone, so for example, I trust this organization to be fair to all employees. If somebody says, I disagree with this statement, then they have an opportunity to expand on it. So the tier 2 questions really would be for us to decipher why they disagree. Is it because their leaders favor others? Is it because you have to be a yes man? You have to agree with them, otherwise they don't. They're not fair to you. So that's where really we're going with this. The tier 2 questions really are if people score really badly on one of these categories, that then, or one of these questions, then they get an opportunity to expand so that we can dig deeper. And the goal, the idea was we try to limit the survey to as few questions as possible. So people don't have to answer 50 questions. They won't take the survey. So right now we have 20 questions, and then they get expanded if people disagree. Then they get a couple of extra questions, maybe 2, maybe 3 extra questions to figure out why. But so the organizational values, I kind of looked at what was out there, but I didn't really come up with my final sort of proposal based on those, because I was hoping this team might have some additional post-its that they may want to post.
Cello,
Sorry.
maybe you want to, I mean, just adding a couple dimensions here, Kesra, is that if looking at the stickies that you have, most of them, like the ones on that first question, they were different kinds of choices that you could put a scale to, or you could have basically check boxes. You list all of those and then say which ones apply, was one concept. The other kind of question was, do you want to have positive statements or negative statements? Cello, you might want to cover that.
Yes, I want to also, let me just change things a little bit. So first of all, are there any questions for Kesra so far? Okay. So I'm going to share it this way. So what we've done is we've invited people and we've also provided them with this spreadsheet. I know it's a little hard to read but this is actually the categories and the questions are listed here, and this is where people could enter comments. But the more important thing is that if you decide, for example, to work on this organization, let me see, hang on just a second. I need to zoom in properly so you can see. So if you wanted to comment on this organizational values thing, if you look at this spreadsheet, tier 2 questions, you will see that there's a tab for every one of the categories. So you could look at this one, for example, and see, because we had a lot more questions that we were picking from. So if you see some of the questions here that would fit well as a sort of second, inspire you for the second layer of the question, just, if that would be helpful. So if you work, let's say, on organizational values or this responsibility, accountability, or employee engagement, there are all the questions that we didn't dispose of, but we saved them here. And you can use that spreadsheet to help you, add these sticky notes. And then, like Scott mentioned, on this side, we have a little bit more stuff worked out between Jessica and Sherry and Pat Boyle, and Scott and I added a few. So the idea is that these would, in black, would be the proposed ones. And then we would, once we have these and we kind of have some debate and agreement on what they should be, then we would try to make things consistent across layer to tier 2 as well. Because tier 1, we all went always with the 5 level scale and stuff like that. In this one, we might consider using other things as well. So to give you an example, if you maybe this, I'm satisfied with the information I see from management of what's going on. So maybe we can say, and they say, I strongly disagree or disagree. Then the follow-up questions, it could be either in a positive way, check, information I receive is either like relevant to me, trustworthy, sufficient, accurate, and you could even have a checkbox or rate it on a scale. We can discuss that to make it consistent. Or you could say, information I see is irrelevant, not trustworthy, not sufficient, not accurate, because we're following up on their negative statement. So also, if we wanted to ask them, what kind of information is it that you want to receive more of? Is it about projects, career opportunities, available training, overall performance of the organization? And we can, work on improving these, but these black ones are here just as a proposed, place to start. the tier 1, the 20 that we showed up originally started from 400, and here we want to end up with 2 or 3 per category, but we have far fewer that we have to sort of deal with. So I'll just stop right now and see if there are any questions, any concerns, or any thoughts that somebody wants to share. Mark.
None for me at this point, Shelo.
Okay, so Parijat or Pat Boyle, since I'm saying Pat Boyle because there was also Patricia, Butler. Did you want to maybe make some comments or thoughts on the stuff that you've worked on?
Well, first, when I was looking under the tabs, a lot of the questions for reward and recognition had been reassigned to other areas like communication and whatnot.
I see.
So I dug a little deeper, looking at some other sample questions to see what could, and since I was just working by myself, I thought I was doing a wonderful job, and I kept telling myself, I'm only kidding. So bottom line, I decided that at this point that there needs to be addition to the glossary, reward and recognition definitions. Reward, you might not always have the money or you might give time or whatever. But recognition is free. A pat on the back is free. Employee of the month is free. So, but people don't always distinguish recognition and reward.
Pat, I liked what you did, where you basically, after the statements, you put scaled response. So you were looking at the, A, B, C, D, E kind of response, and that was helpful. If you were doing something like a checkbox where you were checking it, we could put that in, because there was at least a couple that Cello and I did where, you could wind up picking more than one of those things rather than rating them, is another concept. But I know when I was going through, I wound up looking at yours because you did them right away. and I liked your scaled response where we were being clear about how are we going to score these.
Yeah, in my case, this is Parijat. In my case, I was it's still work in progress. I see there are 2 new comments that have been added. And then like Scott was mentioning earlier, we have to sort of decide how granular we want to go, to how deeper we want to dig to understand what is the cause of disagreement. And if we want to go deeper, then in that case, like Scott was mentioning, there are 5 options and you take which is the one that applies to you. Is that the approach that we are going to take, or it will be the scales like 1 to 5 that we are going to follow? Will all the questions will it be a mix of these 2, or it will be just one kind of questions that we would go for tier 2?
You very accurately described the question that Scott and I were talking about, and we haven't really reached a conclusion, and we would prefer to engage at least the core team in making that decision, because there are some benefits to having consistent format in the survey, but there are also some places where having the 5 scale thing isn't as sort of effective. It may be a little bit an overkill. So I'm open for discussion, and I would also rely on people who have, like you, Parijat, and Patricia Butler, and others who have, dealt with these surveys, to come to something, to find the right balance between having always the same format of the statement or question and having a little bit of flexibility, for the format on the tier 2 side.
So how I work is I will work on both the options at my end, and then we can discuss if to have multiple options and then see if there is possible just few questions that cover that, and then so I will be reworking on doing some more work on this, and then we can.
So Parajat, do you think that having, both is too confusing to people? Or do you think, if you had a scaled approach on one question, for example, and on the other, you said check the boxes that apply. Do you think that's too confusing to do both, or would you support doing just one or the other?
Ideally, it is said that if you want to keep it simple, it should be one. But then if you want to go deeper into understanding, then yes, mix would make sense here. But if we are wanting to, have, keep in mind that people will have how involved and engaged they would be in doing that, in that aspect, keeping it simple would make more sense.
Mhm.
That's just the survey design one-on-one.
Yeah. So I think that's a great thing, is to allow for both options, and then we will make we'll have a discussion with the team and see how do we want to approach this. Once we have the questions defined, it's really changing the format is really not that difficult. The other thing that's sorry.
No, I was just going to add on, Parajat, where you have my manager communicates how the decision made will impact me and or my team.
Okay.
What you're doing is responding to the overall, I'm satisfied with my involvement in decisions that affect my work. And if you put in like low scores for that, then the other question is, should you say, as you did here, make it a positive statement, or are you trying to say, well, why did I score low? So you might turn it around and say, my manager does not communicate how the decision made will impact me, or I do not have an opportunity to participate in decision making, on the next box. You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
It's like which makes sense to you, I guess, is part of the question.
So,
Yes. Sorry, Kaisra, go ahead. You were saying something.
yeah, so I'm the workings of the mind, right? Different people work differently. And my thought is that as an organization, we put something out there and then I score bad on it. And then the questions they ask me are still positive. So I'm going to say to myself in my mind is they still don't really want to know my opinion because they're still giving me positive options. And even though, even with the positive options, we can give them the right answer, but some people don't look at it that way. Some people are going to see it and say, okay, so now they want me still to score something positive here.
I think that's a very insightful comment, and I think we can totally. My point is that we should be consistent across all the things. So if we're not positive on one, negative on one, and I think it would make sense because it would feel like we've heard you, right? That's what you're saying.
Right. That's the point, right? Because otherwise it's like, now they're giving me positive, they still want me to score something positive,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of someone,
No, that's very insightful. That's very insightful. Parijat, would we be violating any sort of survey rules if we do that, if we go all negative on this one?
No, I mean, not violating any rules as such, but yeah, but how we are framing the question is to say that, yes, because you are saying you disagree, that means this is not happening in the organization. When we are framing it negative, like Kaisra said, and if we are framing it positive, then that means that is happening in the organization. That's what you are assuming, and that's why you are asking, do you agree that's happening? Or you are simply saying, okay, this doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think your logic was a little bit too complex for this early on the West Coast. I think you were saying that it's okay to have a negative statement.
Yes, yes. Bottom line, yes.
But if you have a negative statement, Parjat, does that kind of statement lend itself to a, kind of a checkbox type of an approach where you're saying, where you list both of these, like one would be A and the other's B, you may even have a C or a D, and then you're kind of checking the ones that apply, if you have negative statements, because if you do a scaled approach, that might not, it might get confusing.
I personally would not do a scaled approach to these tier 2 questions. I just sort of feel like that's just going to confuse people even more to say, okay, now how do I rate this statement? I think that if we have the option to say, here, you disagree because this is not happening, or this is not happening, or this is not happening, you can check mark and say, yep, no, that's okay, but yep. So I think those just make it easier, clearer.
Yes, and it helps us reach to the understanding of what is actually happening that is making us disagree. I would be more inclined towards having that checkbox thing than scaled approach. Agree with you on that.
So the way, Scott and I framed these things were really amenable to checkboxes, like, information I receive is, we would go then say irrelevant, not trustworthy, or I would like to receive more information about projects, career opportunities, available training, overall performance, or I'm concerned about the reaction from immediate supervisor, peers, colleagues, management, leadership, or what type of issues would you not be comfortable voicing? Workflow methods and tools, fairness, inclusion, hiring and promotion, opportunities for growth and advancement. So that would then fit well into the checkbox, and it would lend itself to like we heard you, what needs to be fixed kind of thing. Is that consensus? Does somebody have a different thought? Okay, so you need to go, Kesra, or?
Yes, I do need to go.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'm presenting at another meeting, so I need to be there when they start.
Well, yeah, they can't start without you then.
You sure it's on Thursday?
Yeah, so these are our answer meetings, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
All right.
really appreciate it, and I will work on my section tomorrow. So hopefully, if this team if they can put their post-its out there as well, that'll help me finalize them. Or
So-
propose.
So, Sherry, is it still work in progress? Did you want to talk about the stuff that you and Jessica were doing, or have some thoughts or comments on what we've been talking about today?
Well, we went through this yesterday, and we were just trying to extract what a person that would disagree, what other, like, why they would disagree, which is basically what we were talking about, just a little while ago. And so I think that we uncovered as much as we possibly could. We agreed with what other people had already said as well, and we just maybe reworded it a couple of different ways, but yeah, this is what we ended up with.
It looks like what you did lends itself to checkboxes, because you could, with one question, you could do both of those, and maybe there would be other ones that you could, include as well.
But I'm sorry, Sherry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I just wanted to say, in regards to the process, I really enjoyed the collaboration with Jessica. And I know that we do a lot whole group, and then we do a lot individually. But if we ever have opportunities to collaborate with people that we don't typically communicate with on a regular, I think that's a great way to, develop our network. And it was a great thing. We both talk through everything, but we took turns, every other, doing the Post-it notes and everything. And just getting to know her and her getting to know me, I think that was a great thing as well.
Well, excellent. I mean, that's really what we're trying to accomplish. I remember the first time I, had like just a wonderful moment was when a person from one utility, I was talking about something, and he says, "Oh, I just talked to so-and-so from, Vancouver, and it was completely in the background, because they were reaching to each other on other things, I mean, not just focused on the projects, like how are you guys doing this, how are you guys doing that?
Yeah.
And I think that's really what where we're trying to go, is that these groups and teams that we have are going to grow into networks of the collaborative that people can, even if you just want to bounce ideas of somebody, that there's a good forum for that.
Absolutely. Goes beyond the project.
Yes, exactly. Yes. It's also great because you've actually implemented, all of them are in a negative thing. So it's along what Kaysra was saying. Scott and I are going to change all our hours in the same direction. Let me see. Pat, somebody's moving your stickies. I don't know what's going on. We'll put it back.
That's you, Cello. And we had fun with it. I mean, you can see we even put, flavor of the month as one of the responses, because that was, what I'm trying to find where that is. Yeah.
I think because it will resonate with people, because that's what they're going to say about the water around the water cooler, right?
Right. A lot of, I don't know how it is in everyone else's utilities, but sometimes people will say, especially if it's a new program or a new idea, oh, it's just a checkbox. They're trying to, once it's checked, one and done type of thing, they won't go back to it, even if it works. It's just something that they're trying to do, and then they won't go back to it if it's a good thing. So what's new now? What's the flavor of the month?
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we can hear from a couple of folks, if you folks don't mind me kind of calling out. Caroline, how does that look to you? Does this look like a good way to go about things?
Yeah, I was just thinking of how great this looks. And firstly, my apologies that I haven't been involved in the last little bit. So yeah, I think this is fantastic work. I like how it's shaping up, and it all makes sense to me. There's one thing that I'm kind of searching to find on the mural, which is related to both trust and accountability. And it's the I noticed that there's in accountability decision-making guided by performance metrics and involvement in the decision, as well as in the trust. There's talk about micromanagement and being able to make your own decisions. But is there anywhere captured the issue of actually, and this, I think accountability means a lot of this to me, is owning the decision and not having blame, and actually
That's, yeah.
that it goes in the other direction, that people own their decisions and the blame game doesn't happen. And I know that it came up before in the earlier work, but I just haven't found it yet on your mural. So I'm just wondering where it fits, if it's represented.
Well, you have a link to the mural now, and if you keep it, you can get in there anytime. And also, we did, Mark, if you remember, trust was such a huge focus for us. But as we were going through that Kaysra funnel, it may have kind of slipped, slipped by or something. And if we can beef up, and again, we were told to limit it to 15 questions, from 400 ideas. So if we can beef up the trust portion, what do you think, Mark? Is this something you could maybe take on?
Yeah, I could take a look at that. I also think, there's trust built into a number of these questions. I think if it's not used as a word in the question directly, I'm trying to find one here. Because I know we had some questions like for here, organizational values. I trust this organization to be fair to all employees, right? So trust is kind of it's an underpinning, right? I mean, so we don't necessarily have lots of questions about trust. I mean, we could take a look at that, but I'm wide open to ideas that people have thoughts about how to get to trust in the organization.
Yeah.
We did in Cello and mine, we used the word trust, and Caroline, you also used the word blame, and that figuring out a way to not be blamed if
the antithesis of trust.
Exactly. And so if we're going with the
search
negative
for the guilty, yes.
Yeah, the negative comments and the checkbox concept, that could work pretty well.
It may be just adding maybe one sticky even in the boxes you already have, but just something about really that people, that managers, everyone across the board, and maybe it's in the teamwork, I'm not sure, but they own their decisions, or they own their area of responsibility.
Or it could be I'm not allowed to own to own my work, and if we're going to be consistent using the negative side, that would be another way to express the same thing.
Well, and I think one of the things too you can say about, I mean, we could put trust in definitely in some of these second tier questions. I mean, because you can say, I mean, what is trust, right? What basically says, if the organization tells me it's going to do something, then they're going to, I don't need to have additional verification, right? And that's a big part of it. And if you tell me, like, if you and I have a good relationship and we trust each other, that if you tell me something, that I know you're going to do it, or you're going to come back to me and say, hey, there was a problem, I couldn't do it, but I don't need to go and look for a verification, or I don't need to be tentative and wait. So I think, for instance, in this organizational value ones, we could probably put, I trust the organization to, and then you could have that same checkbox approach again, right?
Yes. Well, we can do that. And the other thing is, accountability, you're right, has to do with owning. So Pijat, I can add a blank statement here, if you wouldn't mind adding a third question in that category. That would get to accountability, because Caroline's right, we do that. That would be really good if we. So it'll be 21. So.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I took notes on that. So yes, I will add.
Yeah, I will unlock. The reason why I locked some of these blocks, because people inadvertently move the boxes around, and then it becomes, a mural becomes more of a Jason Pollock kind of thing, And but I'll put something that you can just, you have 2 right now, and I'll add 2 more boxes below and kind of rearrange it on the page so it fits.
Okay.
Okay. So Zonetta, what do you think about all this stuff that we're doing, all the sausage making?
I think it's some excellent work being done, and I appreciate everybody putting the time into it. Looks good.
Okay, thanks. If you have any ideas, just either, just let me know. You have a link to the mural. If you don't feel like, moving the stuff around, you can just send me email. I'll do whatever I can to, I know you got a lot of stuff going on. So I'll be glad to help in any way I can.
Thank you, Dr. Cello.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll, yeah, thanks, Mark. It will, So I will put maybe 1 or 2 more blocks there, Parijat, for you to play with, and need to look at the real estate that I have. Yeah, I'll figure that out. I'll figure that out. Maybe, yeah, I'll move stuff around a little bit so you can more easily do it.
And I put it in a couple places just so that if we can work it in where it makes sense, and if somebody wants to make an attempt, I can certainly work on it in either category. But we want to make sure it flows with the questions that are asked in the tier 1.
Okay, so yeah, I think we can add at least 1 question about accountability. If you think, Mark, that we should also add a specific trust-related question on tier 1, maybe you can think if that's necessary, and
yeah, let me think about it, see if there's a tier 1 that could do, but accountability, that, I mean, if you follow Lencioni's logic and the way he proposes it, you can't have real accountability unless there's trust in the organization.
Right.
So trust is the foundation, and accountability, which is critical, comes later in that, how those things work together.
Yeah. So we've really tried to look at, map that model into these questions, but it's an iterative process. So whatever ideas you've got.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it, see if I can, I'll throw some ideas out there, and then when we come back together, we can figure out where to put them, but we'll just make sure we get some ideas on there so we capture the thought.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
Mark. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say, Mark, if you look at these different categories, trust is part of almost every one of them.
Yeah, it really is one of these foundational things, and but it doesn't mean that we couldn't in a tier 2. That would be a good question. It's like, for instance, you can say, because trust usually in organizations where there's not a high level of trust, oftentimes what you find is there's a lot of trust in like a coworker or my particular group. But then as you move further away, either laterally or vertically in the organization, then that's when you find that the trust really starts to fall off, right? Well, yeah. I trust the folks in my group, but I don't know what they're doing over there. I have no faith in them, right? So that's not uncommon. So maybe we can look to see how we can work that into this, into the questions.
Okay.
And where we're doing check boxes, it's probably easier to incorporate it.
Yeah.
in what we're doing here.
Yep.
That sounds great. So anyway, we don't really, are there any other thoughts that it seems like everybody knows, what, everybody's on the same page and the work is still ongoing. Any other thoughts?
A question for you, Cello, is, and Mark kind of raised it, is there something, let's say, getting back together for a session next week to, yes. When people have done that?
Yes, I'm constantly bouncing between, sort of being too demanding on people and setting deadlines for folks who are dedicating their own time, and I'm so grateful for that. So I always feel like a little bit uncomfortable to say, well, can you do this by next week? But let me.
Well, Cello, why don't we call it a check-in, right?
Okay.
If you can have it done, great, and we'll be completely understanding if you need some more time. Okay. If we were to meet, like, say, at this time a week from today.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
And even just throw some ideas down if you want to get some feedback from the rest of the group. That's a good thing to do too.
Yeah. Yes. That's I will definitely do that.
Yeah, we'll just call it a check-in, and then we'll see where everybody's at. And I'm sure we'll have some more progress to look at by then, and we can talk through this a little bit more in terms of, is it starting to shape up? And maybe even, Cello, we could put some sample. I don't want to commit you to doing this, but or maybe I could help you. Maybe we could even put some sample tier 2s in the SurveyMonkey format so we can see what it looks like.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was planning to do, and I can do that, no problem. It wouldn't take me much time once we have them. And so, Caroline, would you, we do have what we call a core group, quote unquote, which is folks who are kind of really in the sausage making room. So if you'd like to join, you let me know. I can put you on the list. We'll give you homework and all sorts of weird things. So would that be fun for you? Should I add you?
Which topic or which sausage making? Is it the trust one?
Well, right now,
Mike Stahl's cello. I mean, Mike's not on the phone, and
yeah,
there's a little ways to go on teamwork and collaboration.
Yeah. So there is if you wanted to look at the team and collaboration, and the ones in different colors are ideas that people proposed. Hi, Ramona.
Hi. I apologize.
No problem.
I was on another call and could not get off. I was hostage.
Happens to all of us.
To answer your question, Zinko, I'd be happy to join someone on that topic and seeing how to work it in. I mean, everything that Mark has said makes total sense to me. So, I think everything that's there is great, and that it's true that trust is woven all the way through. But I guess I'm just looking for that kind of fundamental, without using the word blame necessarily, but just when things go horribly wrong, my team and my manager has my back. That kind of statement, which I think is pretty important to people with respect to trust. And it doesn't necessarily have to be worded that way, but it's just that element or that sentiment being represented in the mural. And I so far have been looking for it, and I haven't quite seen it. So I'd be happy to work with whoever in where it fits.
Well, Caroline, how about if I trade some ideas with you? We can do it via email, and then if you're available next Thursday, we could, when we do our check-in, and you'd be welcome to come back with us. And then, what do you think of that? I'm happy to bounce some ideas off you.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So that sounds great. And if you can see, you have access to the mural now. You have email addresses for Parijat and Mike Stahl. If you'd like to, work with them on these things, just send them an email that says, hey, because I know that Patricia and Ramona are going to meet this afternoon. I think you're scheduled. Is that correct, Ramona? So you can just jump in and join. Work with people that on anything you want, really.
Yes, Caroline, I would be happy. This is Parijat here, if you want to join.
Yeah.
Dr. Cello.
Yes.
This is on that. I just got a quick question, and slap me real quick if I'm out of line. But to address Miss Carolyn's question or interest, would it be okay, and I don't know if we're married to these titles, but we could put responsibility, accountability, and support, or another word for that, because then that would take care of that. I mean, we want to be who's responsible but accountable, but then the foundation support to do all of that. And I think what she's brought up is very valid, and that would take across striations, but I didn't want, I threw that out there, but I don't know how that impacts how all of these flow together with the other work groups.
So what you're saying, if I understand correctly, just to check, is that we would basically change the label responsibility and make it a little bit broader. And I don't have any problem with that.
Well, and I think that's where you could address it by just, because it all comes in about, you do want people to be who's going to be responsible. You want them who's going to be accountable, but that you also want the support and the trust that if you're going to be held, I want to be held accountable, but I need you to have my back. I think that just broadening that the terminology, and I don't have the words, but I think if you broaden that, that could cover that area. It's just something to think about.
No,
I don't know.
No problem at all. So Parijat's the designated genius to work on this one,
Okay.
and Caroline will help as well, and Mark. So we can change that. We can change that category, no problem at all.
Yeah, and that's just a thought. I mean, I'm not, just advocating that, but I was just thinking, right now, how could we deal with that in one of those existing categories by just expanding the language? That's all.
Well, Zonette, I've never asked you to stop thinking. So,
You may want to ask me to quit talking. That's probably the thing. No,
it's all good. So, and Parijat, has heard what we're talking about. So, Parijat, I will also unlock this title, responsibility, accountability. The only reason I locked them is because people otherwise inadvertently move them around and then make a mess out of the mural. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Okay. So, and you, Parijat, if Zonetta, if you have a better idea, or if anybody else has a better idea for the name for that category that will be a little bit expanded, just send me an email and let me know. Or if you have an idea, Parijat, you can just put it in. So.
Yeah, I will send an email.
Yeah.
I'll have to think a little bit, not at the top of my head right now, but I'll have to think a little bit about that, and then I can.
Yeah, I will leave the name. I will leave the name as is for now, and then when I get the new one, I'll just replace the new one, because I'm so concerned about some of these boxes that are, need to be fixed. That
Right.
I don't want people to get frustrated.
Yeah. No, I understand. I will email you.
Okay.
So I've got a quick question, and I
Sure.
know I'm late, and you probably went over this. I'm looking at some, and I was actually kind of looking at some of the movements and whatnot as I was on the other call. I noticed that some of these are, the second tier questions are asking further questions, but they don't necessarily relate to what we discussed last week. So last week, what I thought was these second tier questions would pop up if someone said they strongly disagree or don't agree.
That is correct. You're absolutely correct.
That would mean that we're trying to suss out, well, what is it that you're not getting?
Absolutely correct. And
Okay.
we've talked about that, and we've talked about, so for example, if we look at this one with Jessica and Sherry, if we, let me just zoom in a little bit more. They said, leadership doesn't care what employees have to say. They're focused on red tape.
Right.
So that follows the logic that we had discussed.
Right. Okay, perfect.
Not all of the stickies follow that logic. Not all of them. And if you, for example, look on here is, I'm satisfied with the information, and then it will actually read negative.
The negative,
Right.
whatever that negative is that you're experiencing.
Yes, in the
And
first
Ramona,
half.
yeah, go ahead, Cello. I'm sorry.
In the first half of hour, we discussed, we wanted to make sure that everything is either consistent negative or consistent positive. And I didn't want to make that decision universally for everybody. And we decided that it will be a follow-up with a negative based on discussions that we had. Yeah.
Ramona, the other thing that we talked about was turning it into a checkbox. So have the negatives as opposed to separate individual ones where you would use the rating scale.
Okay.
You'd have a checkbox, and you can check the ones that apply to explain why you had the negative comment or the negative score.
Perfect. Okay. Makes sense.
Okay, so I think we're making quite nice progress